Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, and even more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. And special greetings to our brethren in Colorado, our brethren in Georgia, in Kansas, in Missouri, in Texas, and Chicago, Illinois, in Arkansas, and California, in New York, Fiji Island, Mexico, Spain, in Africa, Kenya, Pakistan, Zambia, to the United Kingdom, to our brethren in Australia, and also to our brethren in Malaysia, and to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad. Greetings. May the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. This is our special episode, or our day 7 on this special message. Just 10 days prior to the Day of Atonement. Now, I would like to touch first the Bible calendar, because there are many inquiry concerning the Bible calendar. Here on 2SR, on page 2SR page 41, I would like to read the statement saying, according to biblical reckoning, the flood came more than 1,600 years after creation. So I would like to focus to that statement, biblical reckoning. So, Bible prophecy must be reckoned with biblical reckoning. In track number 6, it says, page 20 and 21, these olive trees are called witnesses, anointed ones, prophets. They were to prophesy in sackcloth for the space of 42 months. This is a period equivalent to that in Daniel 7 verse 25, in Revelation 12 verse 14. That is, to a time and times and the dividing of time, a time, 1 year, times 2 years, half a time, a year, half a year, 42 months in total. It is equivalent also to that in Revelation 13 verse 5, 40 and 2 months. And to that, in Revelation 12, verse 6, 1,203 score days. In each instance, the time reckoning by the biblical rule of 30 days to a month amounts to 1,260 days. So, the biblical rule of reckoning is only 30 days every month. That is why 12 months in a year, 12 times 30 equals 360 days. That is the Bible creation calendar. And the shepherd's rod also called it as the antediluvian calendar. In 2SR 248, it says, 2SR 248, this fact proves that the antediluvian monthly calendar consisted of 30 days to a month. 5 times 30 equals 150. 2SR 248. So, the antediluvian monthly calendar, which is also the Bible creation calendar, consisted only 30 days every month. And the first changes of the Bible calendar is in the days of Egyptian Empire. So, let us read the historical event in the modern times and the living past. Modern times and the living past. So, let us read the historical event. So, let's read. Modern times and the living past, page 34. It says, the Egyptians studied the heavens and attained a knowledge of astronomy, and one of their greatest achievements was their fixing the length of the year at 365 days. The Egyptian calendar was devised in 42-41 BC. So, that is the beginning of the Egyptian calendar, and they began 42-41 BC. And we know that that is erroneous because creation began in 4000 BC. By it, the year was divided into 12 months of 30 days each, leaving 5 holidays at the end of the year. It was this calendar with slight changes that Julius Caesar adopted for the Roman people many centuries later. Caesar added the 5 holidays to various months, thus making them uneven in length, and provided that 1 year in 4 should have 366 days, or we call it leap year. Many centuries later, Pope Gregory XIII again corrected the calendar in 1582 AD, and in the form in which he left it, it is in use now in nearly all civilized lands. So that is the state. That is the historical event. The first changes of the Bible calendar is in the Egyptian Empire. And we know that God's people had been in bondage in Egyptian Empire. And that's why I would like to read this reading on track number 12. on page 6, track number 12, page 6, the kingdoms that have gone down, the kingdoms that still exist, and the kingdoms that are yet to come, whose legislation involve God's people. So, I would like to focus that portion then only to the kingdoms by which whose legislations involve God's people. And one of the kingdom that God's people have been involved is the Egyptian Empire. And we know that they had been in bondage in Egyptian Empire for 215 years. They had been in bondage in the Egyptian Empire for 215 years. Now, what is the one of the principal reason why God take out God's people in Egypt? The Bible is very plain. So let us read Exodus on chapter 5. Let's read Exodus chapter 5 on verse 1. It says, and afterward Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, thus saith the Lord God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness. So, one of the principal reason why God take out his people from the Egyptian Empire is to observe the holy feast in the wilderness. Here in Patriarchs and Prophets, I would like to read. It says here, on page 757, Patriarchs and Prophets, page 757, it says, note 1, page 258. So it was taken from Patriarchs and Prophets on page 258. I would like to read verse Patriarchs and Prophets, page 258. It says, in their bondage, I would like to read Patriarchs and Prophets, page 258. So let's read the statement given by this prophecy. It says, in their bondage, the Israelites had to some extent lost the knowledge of God's law, and had departed from its precepts. The Sabbath had been generally disregarded, and the exactions of their taskmasters made its observance apparently impossible. But Moses had shown his people that obedience to God was the first condition of deliverance, and the efforts made to restore the observance of the Sabbath had come to the notice of their oppressors. So, let's read Patriarchs and Prophets, page 757. It says, in the command for Israel's release, the Lord said to Pharaoh, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. Let my son go, that he may serve me. Exodus 4, verse 22 and 23. The psalmist tells us why God delivered Israel from Egypt. He brought forth his people with joy and his chosen with gladness, and gave them the lands of the heathen, and they inherited the labor of the people, that they might observe his statutes and keep his laws. Psalms 105, verses 43 to verse 45. Here we learn that the Hebrews could not serve God in Egypt. So that is very plain that the Hebrews, there is difficulty for them to serve God while in Egypt. And we know that the shepherd's rod plainly told us in 1 SR, let us read. In 1 SR on page 64, it says, 1 SR page 64, this experience of the Israelites in departing from Egypt was written for the instruction of those who should live in the last days. Before the overflowing scourge shall come upon the dwellers of the earth, the Lord calls upon all who are Israelites indeed to prepare for that event. Volume 6, page 195. The 12 tribes of Israel after the flesh are but a type of Israel by the promise, the 144,000. As there were Gentiles among Israel, the type, there will be Gentiles in Israel, the true. So, that is also closely connected to our subject, Revelation 6 verse 6, because the reason why God uses only two kinds of cereals is to draw our attention to the first and the last call. The first call, that is ancient Israel, went out of Egypt, and the last call, that is spiritual Israel, went out of Egypt. So, let us read again in 2SR 234. It says, why only two kinds of cereals brought to view? Why not 5? The 2 cereals are sufficient to illustrate the thought and to clear the lesson. But the chief reason for only 2 is to draw attention to the first and last calls, because reference is made of but 2 Israels, namely Israel after the flesh, the descendants of Abraham, and Israel after the Spirit, the 144,000. But the object of the lesson is for the latter, who are hard at the 11th hour. For the truth of the parable has never been understood by any other company. 2SR page 234. Now, also in 1SR Packet Edition on page 1SR Packet Edition on page 53. Where is my... It says here, page 53, having now seen that Israel going into Egypt is typological, logic rules that so also must be Israel going out of Egypt. So, Israel going out of Egypt is typological. The same with the statement in tract number 4. On page 41, it says, attest that the experience of God's ancient people in going out of Haran and out of Egypt will be repeated at the present time. So, we know that going out of Haran, that is pointing to Jacob and also Abraham. So there are two entities in the type, Abraham and Jacob. And also, it says, going out of Egypt will be repeated at the present time. Okay, so, now, here in 2SR 170, let me read to you. It says, the 144,000 are called Israel because their experience is a duplication of that of ancient Israel going out of Egypt to possess the promised land. So, that is the statement. So, the 144,000, brothers and sisters, are called Israel because their experience is a duplication of that of ancient Israel going out of Egypt to possess the promised land. Now, let us go back to the historical event. The reason why God take out His people from Egyptian bondage is to observe the holy feast. And we know that the holy feast, according to the Voice of Inspiration, is only divided into three. Weekly Sabbath, monthly Sabbath, and the yearly Sabbath. So, that is the holy feast. The reason why God take out ancient Israel from the Egyptian bondage. Now, here in Answerer, number 3, on page 9 and page 10, Answerer number 3, on pages 9 and page 10, it says, Thus the all-knowing one, He who created the heavenly bodies and knows the very moment He set them in motion to govern the day, the month, and the year, decreed that the holy feast be observed in the very month and on the very day on which they were first ordained. So, that is heaven's decree. According to the Voice of Inspiration, that the holy feast must be observed on the very month and on the very day on which they were first ordained. And since God's people had been in bondage in Egyptian empire for 215 years, they lost sight of the Bible calendar. Then, it utters for them the impossibility to observe the holy feast on the very day and on the very month. So, it says here, in Answerer number 3, page 10, and page 11, it says, to prevent His people from bringing upon themselves such a catastrophe, to have them intelligent as to the time the year begins, the Lord gave to Moses the sacred yearly calendar, which cannot be lost or miscalculated so long as the earth remains. Now, the statement says, the Lord gave to Moses the sacred yearly calendar. Now, where in the book of Moses by which we could find the sacred yearly calendar? Brothers and sisters, there is no other record in the Bible except only in the book of Genesis, and it is pertaining to the flood. So, only on the account of the flood, we can trace the sacred yearly calendar. And that is why B.T. Hotep called it antediluvian calendar. So, in the 5 books of Moses, only on the first book, the book of Genesis, that we could be able to trace the sacred yearly calendar, by which consisted only 30 days to a month and 12 months in a year. Now here on page 11, answerer number 3, page 11, it says, thus was the Lord re-establishing the creation calendar. So the statement re-establishing indicates that the calendar was already there, but it was abolished and it was lost sight of. And we know that there is no one as the prime mover of such effort to annihilate the sacred yearly calendar except the devil. It is the prime mover, it is Satan. But we know that God is more powerful than Satan. And in this study, we can really prove that the statement on Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5, 754, saying, He can devise ways and means to thwart the purposes of wicked men, and He will bring to confusion the counsels of them that plot mischief against His people. Volume 5, page 754. So God can devise ways and means to thwart the purposes of wicked men, and He will bring to confusion the counsels of them that plot mischief against His people. And here, brothers and sisters, in this study, we can discern that even the effort of the devil to confuse God's people, to lose sight of the Bible creation calendar, it was even used by God to thwart such purpose. That through the Gregorian calendar, through the Julian calendar, the Roman calendar, God established impregnable evidence. God established infallible proof. Now, I would like to read tract number 10 on page 38. It says here, Though the nations of today do not follow the biblical monthly calendar, that in no wise alters the fact that the original weekly cycle has never been changed. And as it is entirely independent of both the solar and the lunar calendars, had God not preserved it intact throughout all the ages, the saints, now in the times of restitution of all things, would have great difficulty to restore it and to vindicate its integrity. First of all, when will be the times of restitution of all things? That time is the judgment for the living. It says here in 1 TG number 28 on page 15, it says, the great and dreadful day of the Lord, the judgment for the living, the day in which all things are to be restored. 1 TG 28:15. I would like to read again. The great and dreadful day of the Lord, it says, the judgment for the living, the day in which all things are to be restored. 1 TG number 28 on page 15. So the divinely appointed time by which all things are to be restored is in the judgment, in the period of the judgment for the living. In Prophets and Kings 678, it says, the time of the end, every divine institution is to be restored. Prophets and Kings, page 678. So, in the time of the end, every, meaning all, divine institution must be restored. And one of the divine institution is the Bible creation calendar. And this portion also concretely builds the absolute fact that Bethihotep is not antitypical Elijah the Tishbite. Otherwise, if we will be saying that Bethihotep is antitypical Elijah the Tishbite, and Bethihotep died while the Bible creation calendar was not restored in his lifetime, then God failed to fulfill what He promised, that it is through antitypical Elijah the Tishbite that God will restore all things. You cannot use the word all things if there are still missing. There is no dispute to the fact that there are many things that had been restored by Bethihotep, but not all things. As a matter of fact, brethren, such restoration is gradual. It commences in the days of Martin Luther. Here in 1SR Pocket Edition, on page 81, it says, 1SR Pocket Edition, page 81, it is widely understood that during the period from the canonizing of the New Testament scriptures to the call of Martin Luther, the truth was cast to the ground, Daniel 8 verse 12, and that it then began to be lifted, first by the Lutherans preaching the doctrine of faith, the beginning of the Reformation, then followed by a portion at a time, successively by the Presbyterians preaching the doctrine of the Holy Spirit. So in this reading, we can easily discern that the restoration is gradual. But there is an appointed time by which all things are to be restored, and that is in the period of the judgment for the living, according to the shepherd's rod. So here on the General Conference is spatial. It's a statement given by the voice of inspiration. Let's read. So here in the General Conference is spatial, by which B.T. Hunter says, it is antitypical Elijah, the Tishbite, that will restore all things. It says in page 19 and 20 in General Conference Spatial, in doing all this, General Conference Spatial, pages 19 and page 20. In doing all this, he sets in motion the power that is to restore all things. Hence Christ's positive declaration, Elijah truly shall first come and restore all things. Matthew 17 verse 11. Inevitably, then, without his message, we would die in our ignorance and in our sins, never live to see the restoration completed. So that is the most important part. When the restoration is completed, that is the time that you can use the term, all things are restored. When the restoration is completed. Of course, the restoration that have been committed by God through the channel of inspiration is only the truths that have been trodden underfoot by the exceeding great horn. And one of these truths that had been trodden underfoot by the exceeding great horn is the Bible creation calendar. Therefore, it must be restored. And the K that had been given by God, so that in the time of the restoration of all things, the saints would have no difficulty in restoring the Bible creation calendar, according to track number 10, page 38, is the weekly cycle. Because God preserved intact the weekly cycle, never been changed. And we will show to you how Pope Gregory made the last changes concerning the calendar in 1582 AD, October. Although it was already changed by Julius Caesar, by which that calendar is commonly called the Julian calendar. Now, in 1582 AD, let us look at, brothers and sisters, the 1582 AD, how the changes occurred. That instead of making that Friday, October 5, 11 days had been dropped. It became October 15. So the weekly cycle never been changed, brothers and sisters. Only the figure of number. So you see, 1582 October. You can see that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So the weekly cycle never been changed. So in 1582 AD, October 1 fall on Monday. Then October 2 fall on Tuesday. Then October 3 fall on Wednesday. October 4 fall on Thursday. But Friday, instead of October 5, Pope Gregory dropped 11 days and make it October 15. And from that time onwards, That is the calendar that had been followed throughout the whole world, majority, until this present time. Brothers and sisters. And look at, brothers and sisters, the mystery there. Because, as I've said, if Pope Gregory did not make October 5 on Friday, if he did not change it to October 15, the 40 days, brothers and sisters, the 40 typical days will not stand. So, it was already predicted beforehand what the devil will do. And even his effort to confuse God's people had been utilized by God in reality to establish the infallible proof. Now let's go to 11 Symbolic Code. Here in 11 Symbolic Code, on page number 4, page 6, 11 Symbolic Code, number 4, page 6, it says, in the beginning, the evening and the morning were the first day. Day is a measurement of time, and God created it. The day, as you know, is composed of 24 hours, an hour being merely a shorter measurement of time. Since the earth can measure but 24 hours each time it turns on its axis, earth then has as its only means of time measurement its rotation on its axis and its circuit through its orbit. So, I would like to read again. It says, earth then has as its only means of time measurement its rotation on its axis and its circuit through its orbit. So that is the only measurement that had been given by God concerning this earth, brothers and sisters. And we know that the earth began to punctuate even at the time by which there was no yet sun, moon, and stars. Now, I would like to read again on answerer number 3 on page 8. It says, answerer number 3, page 8. The light which shone on the first day, and by which God divided the day from the night, set the earth revolving on its axis, was not, however, that of the sun, for the sun and the moon were not created until the fourth day, when he spoke them for to rule over the day and over the night. Genesis 1 verse 18. While he had beforehand established. Thus it was that whereas the earth began punctuating eternal time with the first night of creation week. So, the earth began to punctuate, brothers and sisters, even before the sun, the moon, and the stars were created. So, the measurement of this earth is not based on the sun. It is not based on the moon. It is based on the rotation of the earth on its axis and its circuit on its orbit. That the earth will in the whole year will rotate exactly 360 days. And that is why there are 12 months in a year and 30 days to every month. So, the time measurement is only the weekly cycle. And that's the reason why God preserved intact the weekly cycle. It never been changed. Because that is the time measurement of the earth. And we will trace the historical event through the weekly cycle, brothers and sisters. Now, for example, brothers and sisters, of course, I would like to, of course, brothers and sisters, if you will begin on October 16, for example, the 70 weeks. 70 weeks. And 1 week having 7 days, so we multiply 7 times 7. 70 times 7 equals 490 days. So that is equivalent to 490 years. So, to get the exact, you need to multiply 490 years times 360. To get the exact date. So, 490 times 360, that will be 176,400 days. 176,400 days. And that divine principle was illustrated in the last 7 days or 1 week, remaining 1 week in the 490 or in the 70 weeks, which is equivalent to 7 days or 7 years. From Christ's baptism, October 16, 27 AD, to the stoning of Stephen, October 16, 34 AD. But in the midst of the week, that is the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, April 16, 31 AD. So, the only way that you could find the exact date is by converting the years into days. So, 7 years times 360 equals 2,520 days, right? So, 2,520 days divided by 2 equals 1,260 days. And 1,260 days divided by or 1,260 days divided by 30 equals 42 or 42 months. So, in this figure, we can easily discern the accuracy of the Bible and its prophecy that the Bible calendar consists only 360 days in a year. Because if it is not 360 days, then Daniel 7 saying 1 year, 2 years, and half of a year. Now, if this is not 360 days, for example, 1 year, 365. So, then 365 times 2. So, that is 730. Then, 365 divided by 2. Then that would be at least 182. Then we will add 182 plus 730 plus 365. Then that would be 1,277 days. 1,277 days. But that is not the teaching of the Bible. 3.5 years is 1,260 days. 1,260 days. So, hoping that in that illustration, it's easy to locate the period of time only by weekly cycle. So, from one day of atonement to another day of atonement, that is 360 days. If we will follow the Bible calendar or the biblical monthly calendar. Now, for example, this is only an simple illustration, brothers and sisters. It is commonly understood by all Sabbath keepers that October 22, 1844 is Day of Atonement. So that is only example. I would like to read the Great Controversy. Let's read the Great Controversy. The Great Controversy on page 400. Where's that statement saying that October 22, 1844 as the Day of Atonement? Great Controversy. You can find that. October 22. You find it or not? That is, I think that is 399. So let's read the Great Controversy. It says, the 10th day of the 7th month, the great day of atonement. Now, it says, the time of the cleansing of the sanctuary, which is in the year 1844, fell upon the 22nd of October. So, that is the record. The Great Controversy, page 400. So, I hope that I could be able to explain it in a very clear manner. So, to repeat again, from one day of atonement to another day of atonement, that is exactly 360 days. That is exactly 360 days. Now, let us now show to the brethren. You remember that how to count the number of days? The one that had been we number of days, the duration of time. Not timeanddeath.com. So, let us look at how to count. From October 22, 1844 to this coming March 27, 2000, let us put March 28. No, it is not, that's not the one. You remember? That is the one. So, October 22, 1844. October 22, 1844. Gregorian. So, October 22, 1844. Up to March 28, 2021. We will count how many days, the number of days. Do you understand what I'm saying? October 22, 1844. Up to March 28. You see, error, because, why is it that is error? Gregorian. Maybe you place Bible. Where is the? Because that is computer. That is exact. If you're so, brethren, to repeat again, I would like to count the days. From October 22, 1844, let us count the days. How many days? From October 22, 1844. I would like to place March 28, 2021. March 28, 2021. So, we need to count the days, the duration time. Have you been able to count the days? So that is, how many days? 6,000? 6,000, that is 6,440 days. It cannot be mistaken because the weekly cycle had never been changed. So, brothers and sisters, listen carefully. We need to ascertain clearly the Day of Atonement. I would like to repeat again. From one Day of Atonement to another, there are 360 days. Now, granting, because in the Great Controversy, this October 22, 1844, it says that this is October 10 in Bible calendar. Right? This is October 10. Then if it is October 10, then we need to count the number of days. How many days from October 22, 1844 to March 28, 2021? 6,440 days. Now let us divide 6,440 divided by 360. Then you will have the total of 179 years. So, March 28, brothers and sisters, you will say, so that is the Day of Atonement. but in heaven. Because this October 22, which is October 10, that is the calendar in heaven. The calendar on earth, at least one day late in the calendar in heaven. Because if, for example, the command of God is in October 10 on earth, in October 10 on earth, we need to afflict our souls. We need to pray so that our names will not be blotted out. Now, if that October 10, Day of Atonement on earth, is also the Day of Atonement in heaven, then there will be no more chance to afflict our souls. Within 24 hours, God commanded His people to afflict their souls so that they will not be cut off. Now, it is illogical, brothers and sisters, and it is very inconsistent that God commanded His people to afflict their souls on the very Day of Atonement. Brothers and sisters, October 10 on earth, while in reality in heaven, in actuality, the blotting out of names are already occurring. No, it is not. Because October 22, 1844, in the heavenly sanctuary, that is October 10. But on earth, that was already October 11. So, the Day of Atonement on earth must be March 27. This is the last day by which we need to afflict our souls, because the Day of Atonement in heaven is March 28, 2021. So after this last and final Day of Atonement on earth, then the blotting out of names will commence in the heavenly sanctuary. So it's easy to locate, brothers and sisters, just counting the days, because the weekly cycle had never been changed. It remained intact. And since from October 22, 1844 to March 28, 2021, it is exactly 6,440 days. Then we divide 6,440 days divided by 360. Exactly 179 years. No remainder. Plainly indicating that that is the Day of Atonement. But in heaven. So, the Day of Atonement on earth is March 27. The same what occurred in brothers and sisters in October 22, 1844. The Day of Atonement on earth is October 21. This October 21 is October 10. But in heaven, it is October 22. So hope I have been able to explain it in a very simple explanation. Because if we will be counting every year, then it is we will spend a lot of times. But numbers is easy to discover, because numbers will always tell the truth. If you will see 2 plus 2, it will remain forever. equals 4. It will never become 3. It will never become 5. It will remain. Numbers needs always correct an absolute answer. So, to repeat again, the illustration, our illustration must be the last 7 years in the 490 years. Look at October 16, 27 AD to April 16, 31 AD. That is 3.5 years. 1,260 days. But if you will put here October 16, 31 AD, that is 4 years. Why? Because from October 16, 27 AD to October 16, 31 AD, that would be 4 times 360. So, it is only by days. Now, 4 times 360. That would be 1,440 days. So the same with October 16, 34 AD. October 16, 34 AD. How many days? 2,520 days. Divided by 360 equals 7. So if the answer is exactly 7 years without remainder, then if it begins in October 16, the end part is October 16 also, because that is 360 days. 360 days cycle. So, I would like to show to you on that diagram, comparing, brothers and sisters, Julian calendar, Gregorian calendar to Bible calendar. Let us show to them the diagram. From Julian calendar to the time when the Julian calendar had been introduced, Julian, beginning from, that is already 1752. Where's the beginning? 180 in. So for example, you see, brothers and sisters, Julian calendar, from April 2, 180 to October 4, 1582 AD. That is 577,645 days. So, if we will locate April to 180 in Bible calendar, which is the equivalent, Bible calendar, and really, it is not in that diagram. Now, for example, April 2, 180, Gregorian. Up to October 15. Oh, how many days is that? 577,645 days. So let us add 577,645 days. So you will fall on October 4, 1582 AD. So in Bible calendar, that October 4, 1582 AD, that is December 9, 1577 AD. And April 2, 1 AD, in Julian calendar, in Bible calendar, that is still May 14, 28 BC. So, the Julian calendar, when that calendar was introduced, brothers and sisters, in reality, in Bible calendar, that is still 28 BC. But we need only to trace the number of days. We need to trace the number of days, brothers and sisters, because the weekly cycle never been changed. I would like to read here in track number 10. Track number 10 on page 35. Track number 10, page 35. It says, "There is no doubt in the minds of any that the Jewish and apostolic churches in Christ's time were keeping the right Sabbath day, and that the zeal which the Roman Emperor Constantine had for the Christian faith would have absolutely forbidden him to absolutely forbidden him to abolish the Christian calendar and to establish another which would annihilate both the Sabbath of creation and their memorial of the resurrection." You see, brothers and sisters, it was fully guarded by God. So, forbidden him to abolish the Christian calendar. In page 37, it says, this historical record, page 37 in track number 10, this historical record plainly shows that the weekly period of 7 days has continued unbroken from time immemorial, that Rome did not abolish the Christian week, but the Roman, and that the one which took its place was the same as the Jewish or the Christian. Now, for example, brothers and sisters, remember, God gives accurate time. Right? In 1 SR. Let's read the statement. 1 SR on page 100. 153. It says, "For God keeps accurate time." So, God is a time-keeping God. 1 SR 153. For God keeps accurate time. So when God says 6,000 years, that would be 6,000 years. And the only way that you could trace the 6,000 years is to convert it through the number of days. Because that is the only thing that preserved by God intact. Because that is the only measurement of earth the number of days. So, do not bother with the date. It is the number of days, the duration time. Now, for example, I would like to read to you the great controversy. 300. The Great Controversy, page 300. Let's read. 327. It says, in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. In AD 31, 3.5 years after his baptism, our Lord was crucified. With the great sacrifice offered upon Calvary, ended that system of offerings which for 4,000 years had pointed forward to the Lamb of God. Type had met antitype, and all the sacrifices and oblations of the ceremonial system were there to cease. How many years? 4,000 years. Therefore, in 31 AD, the only remaining years to complete the 6,000 is 2,000. Because in April 16, 31 AD, according to the Great Controversy, this earth, which is fallen into sin, the age is already 4,000 years. Because we know that the sacrifice, the killing of the lamb, occurred after Adam and Eve were fallen into sin. And the shepherds had made it so plain that from the time man was fallen into sin, or to the time when the ceremonial sacrifice had been introduced on this earth, there will be only 6,000 years. Now, in April 16, 31 AD, that is already 4,000 years. How many years remain to complete the 6,000? 2,000 years. It is very plain. The remaining years is 2,000 years. But since the Bible calendar had been changed by the exceeding great horn, but God preserved intact the weekly cycle. The number of days never been altered. So the only way that we could determine 2,000 years is to convert it to days. So how many days, brothers and sisters? 2,000. So 2,000 times 360 equals 720,000 days. Now, I would like to show to you. This is April 16, 31 AD. So the remaining years must be 2,000. 2,000 years. Now, 2,000 times 360 days equals 720,000 days. 720,000 days. So, we will count from April 16, 31 AD, 720,000 days. Now, let us look at the time calculator. Let's look at time calculator, Bible calendar. Bible calendar. Then April 16, 31 AD. So let us add 720,000 days. That is months. You place it in months. The days, sorry. So 720,000 days. 720,000 days. You see, brothers and sisters, when would be the end of 6,000 years from the fall of man? That would be in Gregorian calendar, that is August 18, 2029. In Bible calendar, do not forget that. Make it a list. August 18, August 18, 2029 is Gregorian calendar. But in Bible calendar, that is April 16, 2031 AD. So I would like to repeat again. August 18, 2029, Gregorian calendar. In Bible calendar, that is April 16, 2031 AD. Exactly 2,000 years from the crucifixion to August 18, 2029 AD. So, therefore, August 18, 2029, brothers and sisters, let us count as sisters of mine. August 18, 2029, add 360 days. 360 days in that Gregorian calendar. August 18, timeanddet.com. $360 days. August 18, then add 360 days. Gregorian, not Bible. What is Gregorian? Then add 360 days. August 13, 2030. So this is called the Year of Jubilee. The Year of Jubilee. So, within this bracket period, the second visible coming of Jesus Christ will occur. Although we do not know. The only things we know is within this 360 days. So, it is not definite time. And the reason that we need to know, because it was revealed in the Bible, the Year of Jubilee. So this is the Year of Jubilee, brothers and sisters. Now, we know that, for example, this is the last. But I do not believe that it will be on the last day of the 360 days. It must be between this 360 days, from August 18, 2029 to August 13, 2030. This is the Year of Jubilee. But in Bible calendar, this August 18, it is April 16, 2031. And this one is, of course, also April 16. April 16, 2032. So that is the Bible calendar, 360 days. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters. This year is the Year of Jubilee. If someone will ask, do you know the visible coming of Jesus Christ, the definite time? I do not know. But the only thing that I do know, the visible coming of Jesus Christ is on the Year of Jubilee, according to the Shepherd's Rod. But the year of Jubilee, there are 360 days. I do not know which one of these 360 days, but for sure, within these 360 days, the visible coming of Jesus Christ will occur. So, that is the reason why we are studying the time prophecy, to know the shortness of time. For example, granting, because that is the maximum, granting the end part, that is August 13, 2030, the last day of the year of Jubilee, granting that is the last part. We know, brothers and sisters, that we will be 7 years in the kingdom, according to the Bible and according to the shepherd's rod. God's people, at the time they arrive in God's kingdom, the premillennial, literal kingdom, there must be 7 years. There must be 7 years. Now, let us backward. Go backward, Sister Isamay. August 13, 2030. Then count backward 7 years. You see, brothers and sisters, in Gregorian calendar, that would be on September 19, 2023. So, at least in 2023, God's people must be already in God's kingdom. So we need now to study what the shepherd's rod teaches, brothers and sisters. The exact date by which God's people will be in the premillennial kingdom. And we are now 2021. 2021, 2022, 2023. That is very plain, brothers and sisters. And try to look at it on the shepherd's rod in the writings of Sister White, and also the exact number of days. To repeat again, numbers will never tell a lie. Numbers needs always accurate answer. There is no such answer that pertains to number by which you are guessing. There must be exact answer. If you will say 7 times 3, it must be always 21. You can't say, it might be 22. No. When God said, according to the shepherd's rod, I would like to read to you. The shepherd's rod says that, let me read the statement in tract number 3, 1934 edition. On page, so it says here, page 71. Therefore, our symbolical number of the Bible time, 600, must be multiplied by 10. Thus, 600 times 10 equals 6,000 years of provisionary time. This proves the length of time Christ will be a savior for sinners. That our sinful world will be 6,000 years old when probation closes. Now, would you think this statement is not accurate, brothers and sisters? That our sinful world will be 6,000 years old. 6,000 years old when probation closes. And that we are living in the time of the end. Here's another statement. In track number 3, third edition. It says, on page 95, track number 3, third edition, page 95, it says, clearly, therefore, the universal number by which we must multiply the number of provisionary time, 600 is 10, and 600 times 10 gives 6,000. Here at long last is the consummate vindication of the Christian's belief that the years of human provision are 6,000. Here, in other words, is proof in the absolute that when the angel of mercy soon finally folds her wings and takes her flight forever from this world of sin, earth and its being under sin will have been in existence for 6,000 years. Then comes the millennium, the 1,000 years in which Satan is bound and the wicked judge. Track number 3, third edition, page 95. You see, brothers and sisters? So, would you think that statement is not reliable? The 6,000 years prophecy? That is very plain, my dear brothers and sisters. So, that is our first part, because I want to divide our study. That is our first part in this study, just to emphasize to you how to locate the Bible calendar into Gregorian. And the only way is by number of days. By the number of days. So, that is the only way that we could be able to trace backward and forward Bible calendar to Julian and to Gregorian calendar. So this March 27, brothers and sisters, is exactly 179 years. So it cannot be mistaken. March 27, 2021 is the Day of Atonement on earth, by which in Bible calendar, that is October 10, 2022. But in the heavenly calendar, that is still October 9. So, the reason that there is a gap of one day, because it is illogical that God commanded His people on October 10 to afflict their souls, the last and the final Day of Atonement, to afflict their souls, so that their names will not be blotted out. If that October 10 is also the October 10 in the heavenly sanctuary, then why is it that they were afflicting their souls, while in reality, in the heavenly sanctuary, the blotting out of names is already occurring? It is illogical. So, we found out that according to the Bible creation calendar, the Day of Atonement on earth is in advance and 1 day late the Day of Atonement in heaven. So, our October 10 here on earth, in heaven, that is still October 9. Why? Because it is perfectly arranged by God to give chance throughout the whole world to afflict their souls. Brothers and sisters, that after the Day of Atonement on earth, then the Day of Atonement in heaven begins. The blotting out of names. So, we will continue. Brothers and sisters, I would like to separate this study. So, this portion is just to explain to you how to locate the Holy Feast in Bible calendar to Gregorian and to, or Julian Gregorian calendar, by which the only medium that had been preserved by God intact throughout the ages is the weekly cycle, the number of days, brothers and sisters, so that God's people will have no difficulty in restoring it and vindicate its integrity, according to track number 10 on page 38. So we'll continue after just a short break, and we will proceed to another subject. So, thank you very much. May the good Lord bless you and have a wonderful evening.